Okay, hi. So we are in week 7 now, and we are going to discuss one of the most important concepts that we've been avoiding till now. This is basically the concept of user-defined functions. So we have been using others code already. We remember that during week 1, I guess, I said that library functions are basically um, the code that someone else wrote for us, and we are simply going to use it. um, this is something that we've been using for a while now, especially the two functions printf and scanf. Okay, we've used it in almost each of the program that we've written till now. Now, different languages provide different varieties of these so-called libraries. Okay, languages like C++ and Java, the libraries that are shipped along with the compiler, they're pretty good actually, and pretty good as in there are so many functions that are already there which you can simply use. The libraries shipped with C compilers are often fairly basic. They actually do not have so many things already provided to you to simply use. But even with a rich set of library functions, one of the major issues with these library functions is that they are meant for general purpose use. Okay, and this is why sometimes they actually, in fact, not sometimes, most of the times, it's quite possible that they do not match the exact requirement that you have, right? So you probably need something deviating from what they are giving you. uh, so one of the examples that we saw last week was that we actually created a program which was trying to convert a complete string from lowercase to uppercase, and the library function that C provides, it is basically meant for a single character. So if you want to do it for multiple characters, you probably have to use a loop and then apply that that function over all the characters in a character array. So anyhow, so almost all programming languages, because this is a very common occurrence that whatever the library function is giving you is not just enough. So they actually allow you to define your own functions. Okay, so you can write custom functions which can be used in your code. So when you start with creating these custom functions, probably the first thing that you should look at is what is a function declaration. Okay, and well, similar to declaration of variables, functions can also be declared as well as defined, and the declaration and definition can also be merged. Right? So merged as in when you define the function with a certain with under certain conditions, you can actually skip the declaration. It's similar to how you can do things like int I equal to 5. So in that case, you're not really doing a separate declaration and definition. Basically, you've kind of merged both. So the same thing can be done with functions as well. A function's declaration includes its name, so you have to give the name to the function, and it should be unique within your program. Okay, so you cannot have two functions with the same name. You have to you should ideally provide a list of the arguments that this function accepts. So what arguments mean really is that these are the inputs that this function expects, and then you also need to provide a return type. Okay, so basically this is the output, a single output, by the way. So you can have multiple inputs, but the output can only be single. Okay, so you have to tell the compiler that this particular function is going to give this particular type of output. So now, if the function, and in certain cases, um, your function may not have a return type at all. So for example, you're just going to print a message in that function, so you really don't need to return anything. So in such cases, you can also declare the return type as void. Okay, so void is a term that we have discussed sometimes in the class, right? So for instance, we've had a discussion over what should we really use, void main or int main. So this is the same void. Okay, so void essentially means nothing. Okay, in languages like C, C++, and Java, um, whenever you write void, it usually means this particular function is not going to return anything, right? Or in case of pointers, void basically is a kind of a a void star pointer is kind of a pointer which can be anything. It's like this. So void is kind of a placeholder, I would say, which is used when you really don't have any specific information about types. And this is how an example declaration looks like. You have the name. This is the name of the function. This is the return type, and these are the parameters. Okay, so these are the arguments, by the way. So this what this really says is that there is a function called to uppercase string, and the inputs to this particular method, this particular function, sorry, are two, right? Number one, it's a character pointer, pointer to a character, whatever way you want to say it. And the second one is an integer. This is what this particular part means. Okay, these are the inputs, and this is the output. Okay, the return type of this function, and it says that this function is going to return a character to pointer. So this is a very simple example of how a declaration looks like. um, just 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 keep this in mind that when you have a declaration, it ends with a semicolon. Okay, so it's like any other C statement, it has to end with a semicolon. If the function does not have any input, so for example, it could be a function which, as I said, right, it's just going to, let us say, print hello world. Okay, it doesn't need any input, it doesn't require any output. In that case, you can basically replace this part by simply putting void again, right? So it's, you can use the void part here as well as here. So now, if you want to define your own function, so what exactly does it mean? Is, when it is a variable, defining a variable essentially means you assign some value to it. When it comes to a function, the definition of the function involves providing the C code, which will be executed whenever your function is called. Okay, and the definition starts with the function header. The header looks very similar to what a declaration looks like. There is a return type, there is a name of the function, and the list of inputs that the function takes along with their name. So this is something that we had not done here, right? So here we just during the declaration we just mentioned that this is going to take two arguments. One is pointer to character, another one is an integer. We didn't actually give these arguments a name, but when you're defining the function, you now need to provide the name of these parameters as well. The other thing that is different from, that is different between a function header and a function's declaration is that, we do not really use a semicolon after the header. Instead, we actually start an opening bracket and then provide the definition, the set of statements that we want to execute, and then end it with a closing bracket. So something like this. You have this char to asterisk, char asterisk to uppercase string. This is something here, some input. Of course, now you have to give the name of the variables. You cannot just keep char asterisk and int. You have to actually define, provide the name of the variables in the definition. And then this is a return statement. So a return statement is essentially going to return some value. Okay, this is the output of this function. This is not really a good definition. Ideally we should probably do something with word and number of characters within this function, but this is just to show you that how exactly does a definition look like. um, uh, yeah, so that's the other part that I'm telling, that word and number of characters are two variables that are a part of this particular function, and we must provide their names, and then we can simply use them like a local variable in this function. So this is an example function. Remember, this is the same program that we saw last week. The only difference now is that we have we have defined a new function. Okay, there is a function to do the same thing. What we were doing, we were basically uh, converting the case of an entered word into from lowercase to uppercase, and that's exactly what we are going to do here again. It's just that we are going to now do that using a function. So this is how the declaration of the function looks like. It's basically the same. In this case, it's basically the same as the function header, and the only thing that is there is that uh, I've just put a semicolon here, and remember that I don't really need to write this word and a number of characters here. It's not really necessary. It's just that I have given it because I like to provide declarations like this. I want my declarations to look pretty good, as I just want them to look exactly the same as header without the semicolon, with the semicolon, sorry. And in fact, the C actually allows you to give these declarations where you are only required to give the return type and the name of the function. You could, in theory, leave everything here. Okay, you don't really need to provide even the names of even the types of the inputs. Okay, um, but this is a good practice. It is called giving a function prototype. Okay, so this type of declaration where you're providing the information of the inputs that this particular function is going to take, something similar to this, we call such a kind of declaration as a prototype. So this is essentially a function prototype, and this is the definition of that function. It's just that some of the code that we were writing in the main in the previous week, I have just cut and pasted it here. Now the advantage of doing this is that I can actually call this function. Okay, the return statement, by the way, is used for sending the output of this particular function back to the calling function. It's not a program, it's function. I just changed this. So basically, the return statement here, the return character statement here, it is just returning the output of this function back to the calling function. The calling function is main here. Okay, and this is the actual function call. Whenever we call a function, you guys already know this, that whenever we call a function, it's similar basically to how you call a library function. The calling function is main. Okay, and we are just getting the value that was returned by this particular method, this particular function, in a variable here. Okay, and the thing that you have to understand is that whenever you make a call to any function, it could be library function or a function defined by you, you may or may not accept the output of that particular function in a variable or in some expression. Okay, you can in fact ignore it. So in theory, I could have simply written two uppercase word, without this part. Of course, in this case I need the output of that particular function, so I am actually assigning it to a variable to use it later. But the idea is, you can in theory ignore the output of a particular function. So this is possible. There won't be any error if you do so. Now there are some important points that I must point out. Uh, the inputs to the function are also called arguments or parameters. This is a very common terminology. The variables that are defined in the function header are called the formal parameters. Okay, these are the parameters where the values reach. Okay, so from your calling function to the called function, these are the variables where your values finally reach. um, the inputs to the function. Okay, so wherever you are calling the function, it could be a constant or it could be the values through a variable. They are called the actual parameters, right? So actual parameters are the actual values on which the function operates, and formal parameters are basically some placeholders where they come and where basically formal parameters are your local variables which you can use in order to perform some computation. Now you must use a return statement in a function if its type is not void. So this is necessary if you are declaring the return type of a function to be non-void, then you are supposed to put a return statement in your function. The return type of if the return type of the function is void, basically you may or may not use a return statement. It's up to you. Okay, it's not required, but in certain cases you would probably like to do something like this. You put a return statement but you don't put a value, so you simply say return and semicolon. If the reason we sometimes have this is because the return statement, wherever it is present in a function, it is actually the last executed statement. Okay, it could be anywhere in the function. For example, it could be inside a if condition, and this is what we are doing here. It's the same program. It's just that what we have done now is that we have rewritten that particular function, okay, in such a way that now it also prints the output of the program, so I really don't need to return anything back to the main. And here I'm actually using this facility to have a return statement without any value to my advantage. Essentially what I'm trying to do is I'm simply trying to uh, I'm simply trying to uh, return from the function whenever uh, I do not want to continue processing. So in this case, for example, if the string that I'm supposed to convert to an uppercase string, if the size of the string is simply 0, I don't actually need to do anything. So I've used an if statement and I've simply put a return. So now once this return gets executed, anything here in this range that is not executed. So this is one way to make use of return statements even when you are not actually returning anything from the function. And remember, the main function, it's also a function, right? I mean, we've been writing it from day one. It's actually a special function because when the execution of your program starts, it starts from the main function. You can have multiple functions in your program, and unless you actually call them, they'll not be executed. But main is the function from where your execution starts. And if you define a function before you call it in the code, okay, this is important that it has to be before making a call to it. In that case you don't actually need a declaration, and this is another thing that I'm doing in this variant of this program. I've basically put this function over int main. So now when I'm calling it here in int main, I don't actually need to provide a declaration separately. I can simply call this function directly and there will be no errors. So there is some homework, have a look at it. We'll discuss this in the class on Monday. Bye.